Beam me up, Scotty, because this week on Cinefiles TV, we're going into the darkness with the latest J.J. Abrams Star Trek flick. We also got a special guest. Stay tuned. Welcome to Cinefiles. I'm Totsky.
I'm Tito.
I'm Misty.
I'm Ashcake.
And I'm Steve.
We're all loving family today as we're gathered very around 1/3 of the dining room table.
Our first special guest, Misty Oaks.
Hello.
Hello, Merks.
She's going to tell us all about what she thought of Star Trek Into Darkness. Go.
It was amazing. I
No,
actually...
seriously, we're not going into that yet.
Remember when it fell through the clouds? I
That's
can't.
amazing.
I can't either.
Dead.
Anyway, so we're going to try a little bit of a change in format for this episode. We've brought in special guest Misty Oaks, and we are now reviewing Star Trek Into Darkness,
I
which...
didn't get a last name. What's up with that?
You choose not to have a last name.
Yeah, you
Ash
chose
Cake.
not to have...
Yeah.
Wait, is your mic on? Do you want to take another take?
I was just trying to make fun, assholes.
All right, Star Trek Into Darkness. I think, was anyone really pleasant, like really shocked at the movie? Was it
Yes.
jaw-droppingly?
Yeah.
Really?
I gotta say, I think and because it's the first one is the reason, but I think the first one was more jaw-dropping.
Yeah.
However,
Yeah.
this was a solid-ass follow-up.
This one, I think, as much as like the first one was very shockingly like, wow, this has brought it to a new generation. This was just a plain old fun popcorn summer flick. I found like it's really entertaining. It keeps your attention the whole way through. There's
Yes and no.
Nothing special.
I
about
agree.
it,
I agree, but yes and no, because I don't think it was mindless, and that's what I associate. Like, you take a look at the trailer for the new Riddick movie. I'm like, it looks pretty fucking ridiculous, you know? Like, and I already tweeted that. That's online, but no, it's that's the kind of movie that is that summer blockbuster popcorn eater. Like, you don't have to think about a thing. This one had a lot of interesting themes. I mean, the union of Spock and Kirk kind of taking a new level, and my favorite part was the aspect of like discovering death kind of thing, or like the acceptance of death that Kirk seems to refuse.
I feel they made a really good Star Wars movie.
I don't get that reference.
It's the pacing.
I think it has everything to do with the fact that the original Star Trek movies and the series are all based around the meeting of different worlds and the cultural impact, and basically the United Nations but in space is what Star Trek was.
And yet it was turned into like a sight gag.
Yeah, exactly. And just like in Star Wars, Star Wars, like when you go into the cantina, you're like, oh man, that thing's fucked up. Oh, that's even more fucked up. What are all these gross things hanging out in this bar?
That chick has 3 boobs.
Well,
You're gonna wish you had 3 hands.
but that's exactly how this movie felt, because like every alien, I'm like, the only real lip service that they pay is like Vulcans and the Klingons, and I'm like, okay, let's show some Andorians. No, let's show like some guy with giant eyeballs that we've never seen in the
Or that
canon
weird
before.
android that was like a
Yeah, and I'm
Data.
like, well, I don't even know what that was. I'm like, is this android Data? Is he like the precursor to Data? I mean, does he run on Mac or Windows?
Linux for sure. Ubuntu.
It was definitely entertaining. Like, I think we did the preview episode of Cinephiles where we talked about what our expectations were, and I think all of ours were met. I know you were really focused on the whole Kirk and Spock relationship. You know, you went really girly, typical, but I was totally on board with what you said, though, because I loved how the fact that I think front and center of this movie was the relationship between Kirk and Spock.
Well, I think that's that was the crux of the first movie as well, and I think like that's kind of like what makes them good.
In the first movie, it was kind of thrown on its head because they weren't friends; they were rivals. And now it's like, okay, we're friends, and it's how tight, right?
I'm going to take my mum to see it. And yesterday, I literally convinced a guy in line. He was deciding whether to see Iron Man 3 again or Star Trek. And I convinced him. He was pretty skeptical, but I'm like, go watch it. Like, it's worth it. You'll love it. I'm like, it's not really like... Because he's like, well, I didn't really like the old movies. I'm like, well, it's not like the old movies. It's more like... It's not like watching a television program. It's like actually watching a movie. Like, it's not like the old episodes. It's a new thing, and it's lots of fun, and... Like I said, the whole, like, Spock and Kirk relationship really was elaborated on. So that was cool, and they really like strengthened it, and the whole family thing. That's lots of fun too. And Karen's hot, so that's cool. I'm good with that. So 4.5 out of 5. Lens flares.
Okay, I can do that.
Yeah.
My thoughts wrapping up talking about Into Darkness and coming back into the new Star Wars. There you go. Star Trek universe is that what really shines about Star Trek in the original, besides being such a hot button way to talk about civil issues in a new way and actually get the networks to air it on TV back in the 60s and 70s, is the characters, is the crew. And I think that you get such a great sense of the crew in this one. The first one was kind of a collection of the crew, and there were some funny moments where Kirk's trying to nail Uhura, and okay, that's playing off of that first interracial kiss on TV ever, and it's kind of all fun and games. You get to meet Scotty finally. Bones has his great line where you figure out why he's fucking called Bones. But in this one, it's actually the crew all coming together as a crew, as a family, and they even use that word. Khan uses that word to describe his crew as well, and kind of likens himself to Kirk in a couple points, and I thought that was really interesting. Very, very tight writing in that the ripple effect of the first one with the timeline changing and Nero fucking everything up, destroying Vulcan, attacking Earth. Very well written for the cause and effect of it. And that seems to be one of the things that follows the movie around, is the cause and the effect. Things happen, and things happen directly because of it. There's none of this Rambo 4 and he's, killed half of Afghanistan and then he just gets to go home and eat a burger. There's none of that old school way of thinking. But there are a couple parts where I thought it lacked, the writing for... Okay, if you take a look at the original series, every time Kirk, goes to an alien planet, there's an alien with giant tits that's in soft focus. So there's kind of a callback to that when you see Alice Eves. Yeah, usually. Prime Directive be damned. But there's this one where there's, the total gratuitous shot of Alice Eve as Marcus... Carol Marcus. Just whipping her stuff out for Kirk to see, and totally baiting him.
Her
turn around,
her very chiseled stuff.
No, you don't have to turn around, but I have to say turn around, right? I just think that there's a couple parts where it fell just a little bit flat, but overall, this thing soars. This thing's way up there. So I gotta give it. I'm gonna give it 4. I think I gave 4.5 in the podcast, but I'm changing that. I'm knocking it down just a little bit. We're gonna have 4 out of 5 Alice Eve's tits.
The thing that really surprisingly struck a chord was the acting, the performances. I think that Bruce Greenwood's death scene actually hit me so hard. I cried like a little baby for a few minutes, and I just couldn't get over it. And and obviously Benedict Cumberbatch's sort of, I guess, would this be considered his breakthrough? I mean, it's
American
a major,
breakthrough.
Yeah, it's a major role, and I think he is very striking, in his looks, but I think his performance was up to par as well. So, for me, I loved the first movie, and I am slowly getting into more of the sort of fandom of it. I kind of forgot that I watched a lot of Star Trek as a kid, so it sort of brought it all back, and I really appreciate this movie and the filmmaking process. So I think I would give it a solid 4 out of 5.
For what?
For what? Something themed to do
I think
with the movie.
For
Something to make my life
in the
hard.
shower.
I think specifically for me, I actually was shocked by the performances. I think they could have been bad, but they were good. So
Cool. So 4 out of what? 4 what? Your unit of measurement.
4 out of 5.
4 out of 5 what though?
Yeah,
4 out of 5.
Or what's out of 5?
Fucking 4 naked Cumberbatches.
Yeah.
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 And Star Trek Wrath of Khan, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, which they consider a trilogy, because they actually wrote all those 3 in tandem. Yeah. And then wrote the other ones after the fact. I loved those 3 movies. Absolutely adored them. I wasn't really big of a TNG fan. Loved Voyager and then Enterprise, and I watched them all. I've always been a Star Trek fan. Love the whole mythos, the universe. I think that's established. Star Trek 2009 came out with a reboot with J.J. Abrams at the helm, and I was very curious as to how this is going to be portrayed. That movie blew my mind at the fact of what they did with the writing, what they did with the characters. Carl Urban as Bones, I think, is absolutely fantastic. Doing a complete rip-off of DeForest Kelley, you know what I mean? I think that's his name, yeah. Doing a complete rip-off, he's completely imitating them, and it works so well. So, That being said, love the 2009 version, and like that was shocking to me. Go into Darkness, kind of wanting that same effect, and I didn't get it. It was fun, it was very entertaining, but to me the wow factor was lost. Especially, like you said, they didn't bury the lead at all into going to the third act, where they literally copied the Wrath of Khan scene, spoilers, line for line almost, except they had the roles reversed. But that said, it was still a great movie, very entertaining. To me, the Spock and Kirk relationship took center stage, with Khan being kind of the backstory. Benedict Cumberbatch, well said, Misty, where it is going to be his breakout role in the U.S., because those VOs that he did on the trailer still gives me chills. Like, well written by Damon Lindelof, and Cumberbatch nailed it. It was absolutely a great performance. Like I said, so not as shocking as the first one or the 2009 reboot, but still very fun, entertaining movie that needs to be seen on like a big screen in the theater. Go check it out. It is a popcorn summer fun flick. So with that said, I give it 4 Live Long and Prospers out of 5.
Carol Marcus, who actually was the name of Kirk's
wife,
whatever, the mother of his son, right? So I thought that was a really interesting way of reintroducing her into kind of like their first meeting, right? And that's where the movie's strength lied, in the fact that they paid attention to the continuity, and that because of the events of the first movie, they've created a separate continuity. If those that recall, essentially the Botany Bay, which was the ship that Khan was on, in the original show was found by the Enterprise years into their 5-year mission, and it created a really good episode that spawned the movie. In this plot, because of what happened to Nero, what happened with Nero, the Federation has become a lot more aggressive in their defense, and so they're exploring all their little gaps of space within their territory, and they find the Botany Bay way ahead of time. And as such, it kind of changes the dynamic of who Khan is in this movie. I was crossing my fingers that they might have made Khan into a good guy, in the sense that, like, because of the different timeline, his motives have changed. But I mean, that being said, it makes sense why he would be a villain in what happens to him and all that. So, I mean, it was a good movie. Am I going to watch it again when it comes out on DVD? Yeah. Am I going to watch it again and again and again? Probably not. It doesn't have that resonance in me like movies like Iron Man 3 did. So, yeah, I mean, pretty much what I expected. And unfortunately, that's kind of a bad thing, because you expect them to up the ante. That being said, I am very excited for J.J. Abrams' Star Wars movie that he's going to be making, because this seemed like a huge demo reel, like practice for this movie. So I would give it probably 3 out of 5. 3 out of 5 Kirk yelling cons.
Oh, nice.
What did you think of the ending of Star Trek Into Darkness? Leave it in the comments below, and make sure you double tap that like button.
We also do a podcast. Check out the full uncensored version of our Cinephiles review on Star Trek Into Darkness, www.ymmpodcast.com.
We also are all over the internet. We've militarized quicker than in the alternate timeline, and so therefore we are on all kinds of different locations, like facebook.com/ymmpodcast, twitter.com/ymmpodcast, and you can get in touch with us and tell us how much you love or hate us at show@ymmpodcast.com. Set phasers to high.
And subscribe! Because, you know, we talk about all kinds
Subscribe
of
to Misty.
Yeah,
click.
Do we have a comment section?
We do have a comment
Leave
section.
some comments down below.
Leave some comments
Down below.
right here.
Right here. What up?
Go into the darkness with the comments. So, for this episode of Cinephiles TV, I'm Todsky.
I'm Tito.
I'm Steve.
I'm Ashcake.
I'm Misty.
See you next set.